So we all have our little rituals and routines to make sure that we are ready for church and that we are not a distraction to others, and the church has the same. We dress up. We make sure that our children are perfectly behaved. The choir ensures that they never hit a sour note. I personally make sure that my sermons are void of any ums or awkwardnesses. See, I even mispronounced that. And everything is just perfect, and if one thing falls short, then it can send everyone else into a fit of distraction, and they leave that place of orientation where they feel like they can worship perfectly. And nothing is worse than cell phones going off in the middle of church. And one time, my very first Christmas as a rector, this was about 6 or 7 years ago, at the Christmas Eve service, a cell phone went off during the psalm, and it got everyone so distracted that it took us a solid 3 or 4 seconds to continue reading. So there was a woman who came in right before the service, maybe the 5 minutes before, and she was in absolute tears. It was the first time I had ever seen her. Her beloved, her wife of 30 years, died just the day before. And she hadn't been to church in decades, and then she decided that in her grief that she needed to come and go to church. And she was beside herself. And in the midst of all of the chaos of the evening, in the midst of my own anxiety of doing this thing on my own for the first time, I tried my best to console her, and I held her hands, and she cried and told me all about the person that she loved and lost, and her history with the church, and her desperation to find some sort of consolation. And then the organ started to play, and I had to run back. And I was thinking to myself, I just need to grab someone to sit with her, to show her the care that she needed. And then I couldn't find anyone in time, and all of a sudden I was sitting in my special seat behind the altar, looking at this woman in the front row crying. And in the middle of the first lesson, a new-ish family to the church with their 3 teenage daughters, they come in late every time, and without fail they came in late. And they sat in the pew behind this woman. And then the mother, who I thought was young enough to always have her phone silenced, sat right beside her and saw what was happening, and then got up brazenly and beautifully and sat down next to her, put her arm around her, and held her hand. She didn't know what she was crying about, but she knew that she needed a friend. And I was literally brought to tears, and I ever so subtly pulled out my phone and texted her a simple thank you, because I knew that she needed to be acknowledged and thanked for this beautiful thing that she did. And then in the midst of the psalm, in this beautiful moment, you heard this da-da-da-da, da-da-da-da. And then she panicked. She realized it was her phone. She vaulted over the pew, went into her purse, grabbed her phone, looked at the screen. Everyone is looking at her now. And then she saw who the text was from, and we made eye contact with our mouths agape. And I'm sure everyone there except for us thought that was just a distraction and not the fruit of a beautiful moment. And then the thing is with all of these things that we do here, of course the choir is going to hit a sour note occasionally. My sermons are authentic, but they're clumsy. Children are never quiet in church, and nor should they be. We are here with every intention of worshiping God in perfection, but we will fail time and time again. And that is not only okay, it is to be expected. And then what we see in today's gospel is 2 different sayings, parables about the need to be real, the need to keep our saltiness, to keep what makes us unique. And we hear another one about keeping a lamp on a lampstand. This is common sort of sense teachings about what we are meant to do with our faith. Then we have this dialogue about keeping the law and the prophets, and then with a challenge to be different than the very people whose job it is to know the law and the prophets. And all of this seems sort of disjointed, but it is in harmony in ways that may not be immediately apparent. So the law and the prophets are meant to serve mankind. Christ teaches us that the foundation of all the law and the prophets is to love God above all else and to love our neighbor as ourselves. And the second that our practice of the law goes against those ideals, then it is as if salt has no longer tastes salty. It is as if we light a lamp, something that is innately good, and we hide it so no one can see it. In the same way, everything that we do here in church, from making sure that the altar and the flowers are beautiful, to the music that we present, to the things that we write, to the production of the bulletin, everything is meant to be a reflection of our love for God and the love of our neighbor. And the second that it takes from our soul rather than feeds it, then we need to treat it as if it is salt that has lost its saltiness and cast it aside. If your ministry here, even if it is a good and holy thing, takes from you and makes you resentful, and you wish so badly to hand it off, then don't wait, let it go. Or if you see something here that can be a work of love on your behalf, then lean into it. Find what is good and feed it. We are in a unique place where two different people can do the exact same thing, and one thing can be a good and holy and beautiful thing, and it can be soul-sucking for another. So give yourself permission to do what is right for you, so you can put your lamp on a lampstand. Let it feed your soul and let it feed others. And in the same way here, if we find that some of our ministries are no longer to the glory of God and for love of our neighbor, then let us cast them aside, maybe even for just a season. If our music this is not picking on the choir, but if our music program becomes more about producing beautiful music than it is about feeding the soul of the congregation, let's give it up. You guys don't do that, by the way. But if you did, all of this is secondary for the light that is inside of you. That light that can be a sign of love for people that is hurting. And let it never be a task for you that is done joylessly and out of routine or a sense of duty. That is not what we are called to do here. Instead, let your light shine forth. Let God light a fire in your belly. Let you be bold and go in the world and in our church in a way that suits you, in a way that is joyful, in a way that is real, and you will keep your saltiness. Amen.